Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. My name is Rob Peeters, coming at you somewhat live. I say somewhat live because this is a podcast, but I like to treat it like a radio show where I spew my opinions. From Indianapolis, and joining me from Charlotte is my co-host, Josh Roller. And we have a really big show for you in store today because there was quite the glut of auto racing over the weekend. And if you watched all the races like me, or caught some of the highlights like Josh, or haven't seen any and need a good recap, you're listening to the right show. So before we get started today, we want to thank all of our returning listeners. Thank you guys so much for showing up and showing out for us. We appreciate you. We see our listener base growing. We can see those Anchor analytics going up, and that's what I always like to say. So we thank you guys for helping support this podcast. We promise we're not at the point yet where we can make any money off of this by shoving ads down your throat, but when we do, we'll give you a forewarning. Believe me. But hey, if you like that banter, you'll like it even more by following us on Twitter. I'm at rpeters33, Josh is at roller_01, and our show is at Robin Roller. And so I think, I'm looking at this right now, and I'm pretty sure it's time to jump right on into the news. So let's get into Rob's Racing Report, which is my segment where I'll recap the news here. Let's get it started right here. Let's go on with Formula One. We got some big Formula One news, big time stuff dropped literally in the morning, right before I almost said San Marino. I'm sorry, Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. The Miami Grand Prix has become a reality. Yeah, finally, Josh says. Yes, finally. It has become a reality and will be on the 2022 Formula One calendar with an ambitious, that's my editorialization, an ambitious 10-year deal. The temporary circuit will be on the grounds of Hard Rock Stadium, home of the National Football League's Miami Dolphins. It will be a 19-corner, 5.41 kilometer length circuit with 3 potential DRS zones. It is believed that the Miami GP will take place earlier in the season. However, the future of the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas remains in question. Now, that's a big thing to keep in mind here because who knows what's going to happen with Circuit of the Americas. I like the Formula One race Circuit of the Americas, personally. I think it's a good track. I'd hate to lose it. But, with this Miami Grand Prix, I mean, is that 24 races?
Well, I think that's probably the plan to put 24 races in there, unless this replaces like Vietnam, unless this, because I don't think the Vietnam race is going to happen. I just don't think that's going to happen.
That race at this point is bad as dead in the water as most IndyCar planned street races.
Yeah, this is going to be.
They really do not have a very good track record on street races. IndyCar doesn't, and that's why I am concerned about this because street racing in the United States is very fickle. I think. That's because we've done this before, and I think a lot of the problems that people have wanted is we've wanted a proper race circuit in the United States, not just a bunch of street circuits. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's why I'm nervous because it's like we have this really good track in Circuit of the Americas. We have a pristine, Grade 1, world-class racetrack in Austin, Texas. Now, we do also have one in Indianapolis. I'm not faulting that. Believe me, I want Formula One to come back to Indianapolis as much as I want. That's not what the issue is here. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about strictly Circuit of the Americas was built to host Formula One. It was built to host world-class auto racing, and quite frankly, it would be very disappointing if, it went from hosting Formula One, WEC, MotoGP, and IMSA to having to now just resort to NASCAR and IndyCar to get by. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it would be really disappointing to see that happen to a track that should be hosting much more world-class motorsports. Not saying NASCAR and IndyCar can't be there. I'm all for more racing series at Circuit of the Americas, but I also would like to see it retain that kind of world-class American draw. It's like when you look at Circuit of the Americas, you should feel as an American a sense of nationalism that this is our track. As if you were as with any Formula One stop. I think if you are a resident of whatever country Formula One goes to, you should feel a sense of nationalism around that race. You know what I mean? And I feel like we should feel a sense of nationalism around Circuit of the Americas and our track. Because that's our track.
Especially when it carries the United States Grand Prix title.
Right.
You know,
like if this is going to be just the Miami Grand Prix, then I mean that's great and fine. But we can't lose the United States Grand Prix and have that not be at a permanent facility. It's all good and fine if you want to name a street circuit, the blank city Grand Prix, but I would really like to see the United States Grand Prix moniker stay with a permanent circuit. And right now, the only two permanent circuits that can host Formula One are Circuit of the Americas and Indianapolis. So it's going to be one of those two, basically, that's going to host it. So, and I don't want it to be like a situation where they have to go to all three. If they do go to all three, that's great. But
I don't think they'll go to all three. I think that's going to be a pipe dream. I don't see them going to all three at best. And I think this is even a far-fetched one where they do like a 3-track rotation where they go to tracks A and B year 1, B and C year 2, C and A year 3, so on and so forth. I don't think that'll happen. As much as I think that'd be cool and fair and mix the schedule up, I don't think that's going to happen. I know, and not to backtrack, but I think the big draw at the street circuits is you can bring the race directly to the fans. You can't build this facility in 2021, as we will talk about later in the show. You can't build a racetrack right next to a city anymore. It's got to be there. You have to build it temporarily, and that's what IndyCar's going to is St. Pete this weekend. That's what the Miami GP's for. That's what Long Beach is for. It's what Nashville Street Course is for. You bring the race to the fans, you tear it down, and you move forward with your lives a week later. That's the problem. That's just politics. That's just people being ignorant.
Under on how long until this Miami Grand Prix inevitably becomes an IndyCar race? John Oriovitz estimates 3.5 years.
It depends on how committed. At first, it depends on Liberty Media. Do they stay? Do they keep ownership of Formula One? And second, how committed are they to destination years? If it doesn't retain the success, it doesn't retain the excitement, or it brings bad, then it could become an IndyCar race. But I don't think they put this much effort into fear that. I don't think they want to repeat. So my deal is the Brenda Martin, who I believe is her name. I hope I got that right. Is the activist around the local neighborhood, basically against the race, saying, "Hey, it's not fair to us." She called the $5 million that they'll be giving to the Formula One will be given to the neighborhood or the area annually, I believe. Like a drop in a bucket compared to the multi-billion-dollar company it is. Well, first off, what's the problem with the NFL? All right, in the Super Bowl that happens on that same site. That's a pretty loud atmosphere. I think the Formula One race will attract more people because it's a larger facility and as a whole, but it's going to bring oodles money into the city. And if you don't see it coming back to you, you need to elect new officials. All right, that's the way it works. The money will come in. It will come in via taxes of the hotel, money spent from people coming into the city, into the country, and your hope is that they'll dump that money, or at least part of it, into the neighborhood for better roads, better schools, whatever. Insert more parks, And this is all for 3-4 days of pain, with noise. And first off, they complained about the air emissions of these cars. Like, these cars are cleaner than half the cars running in Miami right now. All right, as far as emissions are concerned. So I don't get that complaint at all. You're talking 20 more cars is going to be that big of a difference to your air quality? Bullcrap. Sorry, I'm going on a huge rant here. This struck a huge nerve with me. It will come up later in the show. It's come up with Nashville Fairgrounds. Oh, I'm done.
I'm sorry. I look, all I was trying to do was play devil's advocate about this Miami race. I don't have a problem with it going on. Obviously I have my doubts. I have my concerns. We've been there, done that before. The U.S. has had street races for Formula One before. They have not worked out. I am just merely going off history here and being a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but I'm also being kind of realistic based on what I've seen.
Yeah, one more point here, and then we can move on because we're hitting 11:30 here already. But because
holy cow!
But the But look at I encourage everyone to look at the former street circuits that Formula One went to in this country, and then compare it to the Miami GP. The Miami GP is a much better circuit than Phoenix, than Detroit, than Dallas, than Caesar's Palace. I mean, Long Beach was the only one that was any good.
I was just about to ask, does it compare to Long Beach?
We'll have to see. I have to see it first, but I think I like the layout and design of this GP, the Miami GP. Long Beach is just well established, and they've tweaked it over the years, and that comes with experience. Okay. Now let's fix this area because of this car. Next year you're also going to have a brand new car in F1, so that's kind of an important point to remember too. How's that car going to race on street circuits as well? I'm open-minded to it.
We have a lot of F1 to talk about, so if you liked F1, stay tuned. We got a lot more opinions on that. Moving on to the next and final piece of F1 news here. By the way, we talked about this last week in an upshift, downshift question, but now we have official news. For now, the Canadian Grand Prix is on, but the Formula One has declined to comment on the cancellation of the race, which is looking to be inevitable. What seems to be the primary hang-up is a 14-day quarantine required currently. Radio Canada reported the race had been canceled, but right now that doesn't seem to be an official case. Like Formula One's being kind of mull on it. I haven't seen any kind of formal announcement from Formula One regarding this, just various news accounts from this. Again, it's still widely expected, that in the event of the cancellation of the Canadian Grand Prix, they will be replaced with Istanbul Park.
Yes.
Which, hey, I'm not complaining. Last year's Turkey race was great. Hopefully the surface isn't as terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, Formula One can still put on good races, and we're seeing it. We'll talk about it a lot more. So Formula E news now. The 2021 Monaco E-Prix will take place on the longer... excuse me, what is this? I'm trying to read this. The 2021 Monaco E-Prix will take place on the longer Monaco circuit, but it will be a modified version of the same circuit Formula One uses. So the tight corner at Saint-Devote, Turn 1, will now be a sweeping corner for the Monaco Grand Prix, and not the bus stop that it typically is. So this is like Turn 1. So, when you're going up the hill, you basically, you brake hard, and you have to hit the curbing just right. Otherwise, you'll be over track limits. Unless you're trying to be Mahavir Raghunathan and just go yeet right on through it. Who cares? That's what Formula E cars are going to be doing, though. They're just going to be all Mahavir Raghunathan, just go yeet right through that thing. I know that I'm being, hold on, my Gen Z millennial self saying yeet twice in this thing. But yeah, it's literally what you're going to do now. So it's going to be a long sweeping corner. You're still going to have to, brake and slow down speed, but it's going to be hopefully a lot more fun. So good to see that. I'm excited to see Formula E on Monaco, the full Monaco circuit. I think that'll be really, really fun to see those cars run around there. I'm really, really looking forward to it. What Formula E puts on, especially at a place like Monaco. Motorsport.com reports that Formula E is working to create its own version of Formula One's Concord Agreement. The objective is to better define rights deals between teams and broadcasters and to boost audiences. This will coincide with the Gen 3 cost cap and technical rules. All this is to help the financial stability and commercial appeal of the series, which, if you want my opinion, I think it's doing a good job of that on its own, but everything could be improved upon. Moving on to some SRX news. This is the greatest news of all time. I texted Josh this like way before it happened, and I mean, you seemed about as jacked as I am. Holy cow, this is great. The broadcast lineup for the inaugural season on CBS. Now, I'm going to go ahead and just read these out in a dramatic fashion as I can. Hosting the show is going to be Lindsay Zarniak, longtime host of NASCAR on ESPN, and even before then, NASCAR on TNT. And then, who do you have at play-by-play? The one, the only, Alan Bestwick. And then following at the roaming analyst position, he is a former basketball star, NBA All-Star, and NBA. I don't know if he's an NBA champion. I'll have to check on that, but I think he is. I'm not sure. Brad Doherty, also owner of the JTG Dohertys. I forgot. I was listing out his basketball accomplishments. What have you. He is going to be the roaming analyst. And then at pit reporter, doing what he does best, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Matt Yoakum. Now, serving as driver analyst, Everybody, please give a big welcome to the one, the only, Danica Patrick, and the man who fought her in 2012 for the homepage of GoDaddy.com, Mr. James Hinchcliffe, followed by the man who literally beat down both of them every single day in 2011 IndyCar, Dario Franchitti. All right, I'm done. But that broadcasting lineup deserved that kind of intro. I tell you that.
It
deserves that kind of intro.
Solid.
It's a perfect broadcast lineup. I don't know clearly enough about Brad Doherty's NBA career as I should. I am so sorry, Brad. I know you far more as a NASCAR analyst and a NASCAR team owner than I do as your NBA career, and I apologize. You are still a great choice for that roaming analyst, and I can't wait to hear that soothing voice of yours again. Now then, moving on. IndyCar news. We got some IndyCar news here. Per Adam Stern, we got a Stern bomb here. Per Adam Stern, IndyCar began to open up its paddock to sponsors and VIP guests this past weekend at Barber, with each team being allotted a certain number of guests. That was an interesting Stern bomb. Pato O'Ward will get a test in a McLaren Formula One car after he gets his first IndyCar victory. The offer came from McLaren CEO Zach Brown following Pato's pole position this past weekend at Barber Motorsports Park. The potential test would take place at Abu Dhabi following the conclusion of the 2021 Formula One season. Kind of cool opportunity there for Pato because he has driven a Formula 2 car before. And before anyone says, oh, but he wasn't that good, he was actually a heck of a lot better than most people would have been who were just plopped into a Formula 2 car and expected to compete against some of the best junior drivers in the world. End statement. NASCAR news, because here's the NASCAR news. This is our final segment because NASCAR, I don't know. Maybe it's no, it's not even alphabetical. I don't know. Just works out that way. MBM Motorsports will return to the Cup Series this weekend at Talladega Superspeedway, but the team has noted the remainder of the 2021 season will be a partial schedule. Harrison Burton will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Talladega. Harrison, the son of Jeff Burton, will pilot the number 96 Gaunt Brothers racing machine after another driver was supposed to make her debut. More on that later. Blackjack Brian Brown, a track champion of Knoxville Raceway, will be the driver of the Kyle Busch Motorsports number 51 Toyota at Knoxville on July 9th. Now give me one reason why you can't be a Kyle Busch fan when he's doing cool stuff like that. Seriously, I'm just asking. I try not to be as much of a fan now. I try to be more of a journalist, to be a little bit more unbiased, even though I am being very opinionated on this podcast, but that's what I do. Seriously, dude, how can you not like Kyle Busch when he does stuff like this? Like, cool. Seriously. I mean, this guy, it's like he knows what fans want. He gives them that, and the fans still give him the finger. And boo him every time during driver intro. It's like, what is going on? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. He'll just always be the villain, I guess. Daniel Suarez will drive a paint scheme in tribute to Red Farmer and the NASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series at the virtual Talladega Superspeedway, which will include a renumbering of his car to 97. If you listen to this podcast in time, the race will be on Wednesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. on FS1. And that concludes the news. So, Josh, I think with the end of the news and the fact that we took just so darn long to talk about it, let's jump right into our featured paint scheme and take a look at I don't know. This season was an interesting season in NASCAR. The car of tomorrow was well in its way. It's a 2009 NASCAR Cup Series, NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. It was a good season. I don't look upon it as very memorable because I'm not so sure about many of the races. I don't think they were that great. He had good super speedway races. I'll give him that. Most outside of that, though, I don't remember it being as great as 2010 or 2007 for that matter. But I digress. But one thing that it did have, I'll say that, what it lacked in racing and made up for it in outstandingly amazing paint scheme. So I had one in my mind. Josh, I'm sure you had ones in your mind. But there were so many amazing paint schemes this season. So many memorable ones, unforgettable ones. I mean, if you were me and were kind of dissatisfied with the racing quality at the time, you had to look in other places. And I looked at the paint schemes, and the paint schemes were quite simply the best part of the whole season. They had the best schemes, the best one-offs, the best, everything. I mean, everything about 2009. Did you know Kevin Conway drove a one-off car for TRG, which was Bobby Labonte's team in the later part of 2009, after Hall of Fame Racing shut down, which, by the way, do you remember that? Hall of Fame Racing, the number 96 Ask.com Ford. Do you remember Ask.com? 2009 was a different time, guys. Josh, tell us all about your pick for featured paint scheme.
Very different, man. I was like, oh, I just about chose that ass.com one because I'm like, this is a cool looking car. It was from a team that no longer exists. But I had to go with one that was my top choice, honestly, from the get-go. That's AJ Allmendinger's 2009 Daytona 500 Valvoline Dodge for Richard Petty Motorsports. And it was a throwback-looking car, a simple car. The sides were white, while the top of the car, including like the hood and the front, the middle of the car is maybe how I should better word it, was Petty blue. The 44 on the side was Petty blue with black outlining, and then while the roof was white with black outlining. I remember being really excited and cheering on this car because this was kind of AJ. He got his second shot because he hadn't done very well with Red Bull. All right, and if I remember right, this wasn't supposed to be a full season effort originally, and he had to race his way in. This is back in the day. Talk about a different time. The duels were run during the day. Now,
actually, this was so long ago that he actually had to compete for this ride for a full-time ride, while Reed Sorensen had a full-time ride in the 483. That's how long ago this was. Believe that. Reed Sorensen had a full-time ride with sponsorship from Richard Petty Motorsports, and AJ Allmendinger was fighting for one. Can you believe that?
This is true. This is true. Very true. And just for in case everyone forgets, or anyone who I should say forgets, the Richard Petty Motorsports camp was 4 cars at the time because of the merger with Evernham Motorsports. You had the 9 of Casey Kane, you had the 19 of Elliott Sadler, you had the 43 of Reed Sorensen, and then eventually the 44 of AJ Allmendinger.
I'm sorry, but the weirdest part about that was actually when that happened, Casey Kane was sponsored by Budweiser, and this was the strangest thing, because I remember this as a Casey Kane fan. And Richard Petty had vowed to his mother a long time ago that he would never allow an alcohol sponsorship on his car. And he keeps that promise to this day.
And that wasn't his car.
No, not anymore. Twisted Tea sponsored cars, so he doesn't really keep that to this day. But he kept that, I guess, up until then. And Casey Kane was sponsored by Budweiser as a Richard Petty Motorsports car.
Yeah,
which was crazy. Because actually, fun fact, there was a thing. The 43 was never eligible for the Bud Shootout because it did not rate the Bud Pole Award sticker. Because Richard Petty wouldn't put an alcohol sponsorship on his car.
I forgot about that.
That. So it was really weird when Casey Kane came in and was a Richard Petty driver, basically, and he was sponsored by Budweiser. It was a really weird thing, because a lot of people were like, is this going to be allowed? Is he going to allow this? He ended up allowing it. Obviously, money's money, especially when his team and Evernham's team were collapsing. Money's money, man. You got to take it. So anyway, you can go ahead and continue now.
Oh, you're good. So all I was saying was, like you mentioned Ask.com, different time. It was a different time. You're watching these duels. I was at this was my 8th grade year, and I remember sitting in class. Of course, I didn't have the data package I have now, so I had to wait until I got home to find out how the duels went. And now if I was in high school or any level of school, I just got home and okay, I'm gonna watch the duels at 6:00. But he raced his way in. He was in duel number 2 and finished 10th, which was good enough to start in the Daytona 500, where he would go on to finish 3rd. It was his first career top 5. It was only the top 5 of that season, but it was his first career top 5. Big day, big scheme. I mean, I wish I had the diecast for this. I don't. But it was it was a throwback looking car. He would later run a more modern Valvoline looking car once or twice later in the season, but I'm glad that this kind of kicked off the year and he was able to run the full season. And I like yours, by the way. I do like your scheme a lot.
And I have the diecast of my scheme, so I'm pretty happy about that. I'm pretty happy about that. But so I'm going to go ahead and talk about mine here, which is really, really interesting. Again, 2009 was... I was just thinking about this. I apologize. I'm going to get to mine real quick, but another really weird thing, was this 2009 or 2010? I think it might have been 2010, so I'm going to stop myself. I'm going to talk about my pick here, because I'm going to stop myself, because I'm pretty sure that car I was talking about was 2010. Okay. David Gilliland's number 02 Farm Bureau Insurance Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing. How about this one? Do you remember that one? Does anybody remember that one? One of my favorite one-off paint schemes that, like I said, I have a diecast of, was the strange fourth car for Joe Gibbs Racing that ran 3 races in 2009. Now, originally, from what I remember at this time, I can't really find any facts to back this up, but I do remember it being a rumor. It was a long-standing rumor at the time until it was inevitably announced that David Gilliland was going to be the driver. But for a while, I believe Brad Coleman was supposed to be the driver because he was a JGR development driver. I think he was in the East Series or West Series with them, and he had a couple of nationwide starts at the time, but he was supposed to get some cup starts. But I guess he didn't perform as well as they had hoped, so they called up David Gilliland, who was, looking for a ride, and said, hey, can you fill the seat? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm not doing anything. Robert Yates is shut down, so I'm not doing anything. And this was before he got the call to go to Front Row Motorsports. So again, Gilliland took it, and he did pretty well. He did pretty good, decently for an R&D car, I would say. But yeah, this was an interesting car. So the font of the number was the same as the JGR 20. But it was reversed as 02. So the numbers are reversed, but it's the same font, which is really wild and interesting at that time. And so the scheme itself was similar to one that JGR had run in the Nationwide Series. So they had run one, I think, with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin, maybe, running, I think, a scheme similar to this. Yeah. But it was a white base with maroon stripes up the side, highlighted by gray shadows underneath the stripes, which really gave it a good pop and a good look. And like I said, it's an R&D car, so you're not expecting him to win races. You're not expecting him to even finish anywhere near the front. But the first race, 25th at Charlotte, 28th at Texas, and then 29th at Homestead. He finished above 30th. I got to give him that. You got to give creds for that. When you're in an R&D car, if you could finish above the top 30, I think you're doing something right. And so this car was never meant to be a front runner, but when it ran under the lights, it was one beautiful, beautiful ride. So, Josh, that is going to do that for our featured paint schemes. Now, at the 30-minute mark, we're going halfway here. Let's get into some of the top takeaways from the weekend. We're going to mix it up here a little bit. We're going to do a little bit something different than what we're used to. We're going to start and talk about our top takeaways from the races from this weekend, the big races, not the little small races that I watch, but the big races that both Josh and I do watch. And so first off, it's just Formula One at Imola. Man, let me tell you something. This race was, it had it all. I was critical last year about the race at Imola. I wasn't quite sure it was as good of a race as it could have been. This one kind of turned my opinion around. Now, I will admit it was helped by the rain. Yeah. It was helped by a safety car. But at the end of the day, there was a lot more passing than I thought. And that's what I said. I was happy when they announced that they were going to extend the DRS zone on the front stretch. I'm really happy they did that because it did generate more passing. Now, I was kind of upset because Martin Brundle said something during the broadcast. He was like, he thought it was too long or something. The closing rate was too much. Or you got too much of a thing off DRS. I just think that's a really negative way to look at it because you're trying to promote passing.
I think some of that had to do with where we were at. I think that's part of the opinion, and where the DRS led into what happened there in 1994. I think part of that opinion could be influenced by that.
And I understand that take behind it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're trying to put on a good race. If these cars are safer now than they were in 1994. And we still saw our fair share of big accidents. We did see a big accident there. Bottas and Russell came together.
Yeah.
Or right there. So it was not like it wasn't. And then obviously you have a point here, that yes, they did. Halo obviously saved Bottas' life here. And that's a fact. And we can debate who's at fault. George Russell later said he apologized, and I think he did take kind of responsibility for the accident. It looked like he just got in the grass just a little, which is crazy to me how he just touches the grass the tiniest, teensiest amount, and then it's so slick out there that boom, revs peak and goes spinning into Bottas. It was crazy. But that's another thing that I was interested about the most in that Formula One race. And Josh, I'll let you get to your opinion here first, but I wanted to say something, and I made a note of it mentally when I was watching the race. people always like say, these Formula One cars, they have so much downforce, right? They have so much downforce. They have too much downforce. Some people say they have too much downforce. The cars almost drive themselves. And it seemed like to me that we were shown on Sunday that no matter how much downforce you put into these cars, if they don't have grip, it's still going to be down to driver talent at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we saw instances of drivers, they were waiting to like the very last moment to put on slicks.
Mm-hmm.
They were waiting to the last moment on slicks, and then when they finally do put on slicks, it's still almost a little bit too damp to really go on slicks. And now you got drivers struggling for grip. It just seemed like the whole race, everybody was struggling for grip. Did not know who you were. I mean, Lewis Hamilton, he made a mistake because he got out into a wet patch on slicks, again, struggling for grip. It just seemed, it doesn't matter how much downforce you put in these cars. If they don't have grip, they can't, you're going to have to drive it. You're going to have to manhandle it. You're going to have to be the best driver. And I think we saw with Verstappen winning the race, with Norris being second, with Hamilton having to come back through the field, the cream really rose to the top. And, I'm not saying that, Bottas wasn't a good driver or Russell wasn't or whatever, just because they had accidents. But you look at all of the drivers who did finish the race, and you'll see, some big names at the very end not scoring points. Sergio Perez had a lot of problems. Sebastian Vettel had a day that he probably wanted to get over with the day it started. Yeah. I mean, I feel bad for Seb. I feel like if he could have paused time and gone and taken a nap instead, he would have. He would have rather have done anything than race that race. But there were some big names at the back of the finishing order. And so it really just shows, people could criticize Formula One all they want and say that the cars drive themselves or whatever. Martin Brundle probably says this a lot too. But, at the end of the day, we saw that grip matters more than downforce. And when you don't have it, cream rises to the top. And that's what we saw. I don't think anybody else in that Merc could have done what Lewis Hamilton did to rebound from that mistake. I really don't. I really truthfully don't, because of just how hard it was to, number one, get grip and get enough grip to make a pass, and then have, the balls, I should say, to actually make a pass, especially with that little grip. I mean, you're probably going to have to go offline. They're probably going to block the heck out your defend, not block. They're probably going to defend the heck out of you. So you're probably going to have to go offline. And, that's what Lewis said. Lewis said in the post, he went for a pass. He went offline, and the line wasn't as dry as he thought, and car just didn't stop. And, that's what it all comes down to, is the cream rose to the top today, and rain was the great equalizer, as it always is. And, these Formula One drivers, I think we've really seen who some of the best drivers in the world are right now. And that's really my top takeaway from the whole Formula One race. There was a number of really good drives from everybody, but you definitely saw the rookies struggle. Mazepin, Schumacher, and Tsunoda were all off multiple times. It was not a track that was going to be very kind to drivers that were there on money and not merit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was very, very entertained overall in that race. I thought it was a good race from a strategy point too. It was an even better race from a strategy point. The undercuts, the undercut attempts, the overcut attempts. You don't see very many overcuts very much in Formula One, but you saw a lot of them attempted on Sunday. So just overall, a very good race out of Formula One. And that's all. And Josh, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you say whatever you want to say about the Formula One race.
No, I echo a lot of your statements there, if not all of them. I enjoyed the race. It definitely was better. I don't have a problem with the DRS zone being extended. I think it was necessary. These cars are not built for this track, and you had to find a way.
It made for a better race because of it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Dry or wet, it made for a better race. I mean, if the race had been sunny, it was still going to be a better race than it was last year because they learned their lessons. And how to make the race better and how to make these cars work in this COVID rescheduling ordeal that they went, because Imola wasn't on the original schedule. This replaced whatever race it replaced. I can't remember now, but yeah, good race. As far as the big moment, first off,
China. I think this race replaced China.
Okay. Obviously, I was impressed by Max Verstappen. Either way, I think Red Bull's going to have a great year. Perez was running fourth when he went off the track. Again, hit a wet spot, overdrove the corner, boom, car goes around. All right, so obviously downforce isn't king in that situation, even at a lower speed. But I'm encouraged. I think Hamilton's going to win the championship, but Mercedes may not win the Constructors' Championship because, again, I think as a quote number 2 driver, no, we don't have number 1 drivers at either team. Bullcrap. Perez will outperform Bottas in points, and I think the second place points of Verstappen and Perez's points will outdo Bottas, because I think also Bottas has to worry about guys like McLaren, and we see one little thing. If it derails Mercedes' day, it's Bottas. It's Bottas that has the issue. All right, and it now is going to come to a point where, like, okay, 3rd, 4th, and 5th isn't good enough anymore. We're losing points because now you have 2 Red Bulls in front of you, and not just one. Because I'm sorry, for the past 2 seasons, 3 seasons of 2 seasons of Formula One, the second driver at Red Bull has not performed as to their liking in their attempt to win the Constructors' Championship. So that was one of my takeaways. Rob?
Mercedes got very, very lucky that Perez also didn't score points.
Oh, yes.
Like, if Perez had scored points, that would have been, this early in the season, that would have been a big leg up for Red Bull over Mercedes. Mercedes got so lucky. As soon as Bottas crashed, they were hoping that Perez had a problem. Just something to put him down, just so that he doesn't score points. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And they got lucky. But in a way, it makes it more interesting in another way. It opens up the door for more what ifs later in the season. I think McLaren's going to have fun. I think Ricciardo's still adjusting to the team a little bit, but Norris, man, he's so good. He's so good. Ferrari looked good. Again, race 2 of the season. But McLaren was looking good last year. To the crash, I tweeted this right before I went to work because I saw the tweet. We live in a world where you have to apologize for being emotional, and I hate that. I don't think his actions and his words that he said warranted an apology. Racing is an emotional sport. All right? The moment you lose your emotion, you lose your passion, get out. You're no longer going to perform well. In Russell's defense, from his point of view, if you look at that onboard and you don't have any other view of it, yeah, it probably looks like Bottas didn't give you all that much room. He pushed you off the track. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And so I think from his point of view, he's going to be mad because that's his one view. He's able to come back later and be like, oh, I now see a replay. I now realize, it was a bit maybe 50% driver error, 50% racing deal, I think that's what...
I don't think this... Can you see Niki Lauda apologizing for this? If he goes back,
I'm not saying he had to apologize. I don't think he needed to apologize. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying, people should have given him the benefit of the doubt there, being like, well, yeah, because they showed on a replay during the red flag, they show an onboard of Russell's car, and when you look at that, you see why Russell would be upset. Yeah. Of course, he's going to be, because he's not going to get out of the car and then look right at a jumbotron and see, another view of the wreck. No, of course, he's going to go right over there to Bottas, let him know he wasn't happy, and with the way he, and then walk back to the paddock.
And Bottas, no one should be. You have this little discussion there on track. First, you okay? Okay, good. Now I'm mad at you. I'm going to yell at you now. But Bottas also should be a big enough man and a driver as a competitor and know, all right, he was mad. I've been there before. All right, we're both going to move on. We're not going to talk about it. And I don't expect an apology from him. But I get this weird, sickening feeling that Bottas was a little peeved by that. And maybe someone somewhere at a certain organization said, hey, I think we need an apology. I think we need to say an apology so we can amend some bridges here. I really think that's the case. That maybe Russell was told, hey, send out an apology and move on. and be the bigger man. Which I'm totally.
It's also a different. Formula One is a different environment. I mean, that's kind of more expected. You're expected to be more professional but be professional publicly, not just privately, but publicly.
But I feel like that's also anywhere. I think if this happens in IndyCar, the same thing happens. It happens in NASCAR.
No, I think if this happens in IndyCar, I think they are allowed to basically fight it out in nothing. Things are done differently. If this happens in, I don't know, if this does not happen in a world champ, like the only place that this happens is Formula One, Formula E, WEC, whatever, World Championship. They're gonna pretty much penalize your ass if you do anything out of the line like that. Whereas over here in the States, it's kind of like expected that drivers are going to be emotional and show their emotions and not be apologetic. Whereas from a world championship standpoint, the expectation is that you apologize for things, for outbursts. It doesn't necessarily make it right. I'm not saying that I disagree with your take, but I'm just kind of providing a devil's advocate point of view of this is just kind of how it is.
And that's fair. I just don't want this. I don't want to live in that world. I don't blame Russell.
It's okay.
I don't want Russell should. Nothing should have happened after this. When they had the conversation, Russell. This is what Russell should have done. When he sees red, okay, all right. It could have gone either way. It was a little bit his fault, a little bit racing incident. All right, moving on. I'm not tweeting anything. I'm all right. On to the next race. That's how it should have gone. I feel bad that he felt or was obligated, whatever, to tweet an apology or to post an apology on social media. I feel sorry for him for that respect. All right. That's all my stuff on Formula One. I enjoyed the race. I just wish it was the San Marino Grand Prix instead of the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. There you go.
Which is still weird because people point out that San Marino's on the other side of the country.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's the same thing with like why we called it the Eiffel Grand Prix instead of the German Grand Prix. We're going to Portugal. We're calling it the Portuguese Grand Prix.
They called it the Luxembourg Grand Prix one time. Crying out loud! They weren't even in Luxembourg.
Yeah, but that was a very interesting. It was like instead of having a European Grand Prix because they already had a European Grand Prix.
Yeah.
So they make up another Grand Prix to do it, which I don't care. But if you have in that case, but when you're the only race in Germany, call it the frickin' German Grand Prix. And moving on.
I don't know.
I'm testing.
Nürburgring Grand Prix works just as well. I don't know. Let's talk about some NASCAR. Let's get back over here to the States. Talk about some NASCAR. The Truck Series ran at Richmond. That was interesting. It's been a long time since we've seen the Truck Series run at Richmond. Last year we saw it, but
prior to that, 2005.
Prior to that, it was a while. So, it was pretty good. Overall, so I watched a good solid chunk of this race, but the biggest takeaway I took away from it was just how crazy the last 130 laps were. Everybody was wrecking. It seemed like nobody could keep it off each other. Nobody could keep it off the wall. Nobody could keep it down. And I mean, from the start of the race, you knew who was going to win the race. It was going to be a Kyle Busch Motorsports car. It was either going to be Kyle himself or it was going to be John Hunter Nemechek. So you didn't really have to pay attention to the lead, but you did have to pay attention to the mid-pack because there was a lot of pack racing, quite literally, 3 wide, 2 wide all over Richmond, which is great. You like to see that, except the guys just could not, for the life of them, keep the trucks straight.
Which I didn't get. The first 80-some laps, they were able to be careful. It was the longest, I think it was, Vince Willis said that it was the longest start to a race, like I think in number of laps, without a caution since 2014. I'm like, dang, there's that many races have an incident of some sort, whether it be a blown engine or a crash or someone spinning.
Well, 2016 doesn't count because of the caution clause.
Yeah, that's true. But still, that was a horrible rule, by the way.
That was the dumbest rule ever.
Dumbest rule ever. But yeah, I mean, I was getting mad because I was going out with friends. I'm like, can we run this? Can we finish this race before I have to leave, please? I'm like, if this race by the time they started the final stage, they would have not drove like they were Arc of drivers. Sorry, I'm taking a dig at everyone there. If they weren't driving like fools, I mean, good night. And then the thing that was a little crazy was Norm Benning, Jennifer Jo Cobb deal. she definitely paid him back, which I'm no problem against short track racing. That's just the way it goes.
If you're gonna pay anyone back, do it at a short track.
Exactly. I mean, that was first off, she wrecked herself, which I think was maybe okay. She didn't wreck, but she spun. I didn't buy the thing that she might have was about to get parked, and then but what was Jennifer? Damaged vehicle clock evidently got her, according to an official stat. But I don't think that was going to be the end of her day. If she lasted any longer, I think she might have been parked. I think they were prepared to park both of those drivers because we can't be doing this. And
we don't. It's just and this is no disrespect to Jen Jo or Norm, but the last thing anyone wants to see, is two guys brawl for last place. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
And that's very true. And I think that was part of it. Like, okay, this isn't. First off, I think you wreck anyone intentionally, short track or not, you're going to get parked. I think we've seen that. They're not going to tolerate that. There's definitely different levels of wrecking someone intentionally. There's a Matt Kenseth, Joey Logano way, and then there's also just spinning someone intentionally. Either way, you are going to get black flag by NASCAR and said, put it behind the wall. All right. But yeah, that was probably one of the highlights of the race was just that.
That's pretty much outside of all the wrecks and outside of that, that's about most I remember of the race, and I have pretty good memory. So
I did want to say this because I wrote it down here and I just reminded myself of it. Is John Hunter Nemechek proving to KBM that you can only catch lightning in a bottle with young, inexperienced so often because they went through Todd Gilliland.
Here's the thing. They had these guys. Look, these guys. First of all, Eric Jones was a Kyle Busch prospect. First of all, he was not.
It doesn't matter whose prospect was, but okay, you caught Eric Jones and you caught.
Eric Jones got the ride at Kyle Busch Motorsports because he beat Kyle Busch, right? So basically, all Kyle Busch has to do is go out to any short track, and whoever beats him could be considered lightning in a bottle there.
Right. I mean, that's fair, but when you talk about young and inexperienced, sometimes you need that veteran driver. I think you just can't put two youngsters in a car and expect to win races. I think John Hunter Nemechek is proving, it's not bad to have a guy with a few years of experience behind the wheel. And I because they haven't done anything since Bell. Let's be honest. They haven't done anything in the truck series with a truck regular since Bell. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I think you're right in that though, because too, let's look at it this way. When you say that they had it's if you don't already have that raw talent and you're looking to develop real quick, it's probably going to be a lot more comfortable for a driver to go to a teammate, an older and experienced teammate, and ask for advice and help than to go up to boss man.
Yeah.
Guy who signs your paycheck. You know what I mean? Be like, you don't want to go up there and be like, I can't drive this right. I don't understand how to drive it. What am I going to do? And the boss man, you could have like that anxiety. The boss man goes, he has this label on you. It's like, oh, this guy doesn't know how to do something that comes naturally to Kyle Busch doesn't come naturally to this person. And then in his head, that could be a red flag. You know what I mean? That could be the anxiety that could go through one of those drivers' heads. It's something that would go through my head. Sometimes there's a time and place, I think, to ask for help. At least this is how I approach it, and I'm not recommending anybody else approach it this way. But there's a time and a place to ask for help, and you don't want to ask for help on something that you feel like you could do your own, or you feel like you could get somewhere else. You know what I mean? Right. You want to show initiative in other areas rather than going straight to, boss man or whatever for help. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that could be something. I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is at all. I'm just speculating, spitballing here, but that could be something. So yeah, it's always going to be helpful to have a veteran voice.
Yeah. I'm I'm enjoying watching John Hunter Nemechek in this truck series. I really am. And it's nice to see. We saw it a couple times, but it might happen for a lap or two. Christian Eckes had a couple brilliant moments last year, but couldn't put it together. It's nice to see someone go out there and like, all right, if I'm Kyle Busch, I strap this truck. All right, I'm going to have to beat my teammate today. I'm not just going to flop into it eventually. I'm going to have to go out there and beat him. So it's nice to watch that. And just again, it's good to see John Hunter because he's had a rough 2019, 2020. GMS just wasn't where they needed to be in the Xfinity Series in 2019 to get him wins. It was good enough to be in the playoffs, wasn't good enough to get wins. And last year in Front Row Motorsports, I think he'd still be doing better than Anthony Alfredo or Michael McDowell at this point in that car. But he's winning races. He's getting his name out there. He's collecting trophies. So that's good to see. That's good to see. I'm enjoying the truck series this year, even if it's been 6 Toyota victories so far.
And headed by Vince Welch's awful commentary. And that's something that really hurts me watching the truck series, man. I'm going to move on to Cup Series here because it's going to be really easy to get by. Basically, this race was... I'm not going to say it was a complete waste of time, but it felt like a waste of time. So here's how I watched this. I watched Cup race. I watched the majority of the Cup. I was out with my family, and we were watching the Cup race. I was watching Cup race at an Applebee's, right? And I'm thinking, okay, this is pretty good. And then I get home, and I put the IndyCar race on. And I put the NASCAR race on the second screen on my other TV, because I have 2 TVs set up, one for just television and the other one for retro gaming. But I also connect the other TV to Roku so that I can watch, 2 games or 2 races at the same time if I need to. So I'm watching this. The NASCAR race, I'm looking at this, I'm like, it looks like all they're doing is passing lap cars over and over again. It doesn't look like anybody else. I mean, the restarts are cool and fun, but after that, it gets all really spread out. Denny Hamlin's just dominating. He's kind of running away. The IndyCar race is a little bit more exciting. Then the IndyCar race ends. I turn it back to NASCAR, so that gets my full attention. And then suddenly the race gets good. And that's what really bothered me. Then suddenly, the last 50 laps, maybe 60 laps, suddenly the race starts getting really good. Suddenly cars start passing. Suddenly you start seeing lap cars not be as in the way as they were. And I'm just sitting here like, what happened? This surely is not a coincidence, right? This had to have been, I don't know. Maybe this was a coincidence. This had to have been a coincidence, right? There's no way that that God looked down on me and said, you know what? You've been tortured through this NASCAR race, and I'm going to fix that for you now that you're paying full attention to it. I don't think that actually happened. Some people could say it does, but I don't think I prayed for that.
And say, hey, Rob, watch the NASCAR race fully next time. It'll be interesting for all in its entirety.
But I have watched the full races, and for the most part, the first 2 stages are dull, and then the last stage is pretty good. And this case was the first 2 stages were really dull, and then the last, half of the last stage was really good. And so, I just was interested in the battle between Logano and Hamlin, and then you get the late race caution with a rare Kevin Harvick crash, then Bowman wins the race out of no, like the whole race. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, Hamlin's probably going to win this race. No, Logano might win this race. It's going to be one of those 2, right? It's not going to be anybody else. The whole time, I'm sitting there thinking, nobody else is going to win this race. Nobody else has a good enough car. Nobody else has the opportunity. Nobody else is going to have a good enough pit stop. Suddenly, here comes Bowman.
That's
on
good.
A late race restart with 15 to go. Wins the race, shocks me, leaves me with my mouth hanging open, makes me look like an idiot for not watching the whole race. It's just, in general, I was pretty impressed.
I think it was just good crew chiefing by Greg Ives. He called.
Well, yes.
He won that race. It takes a team to win a race. Again, people, it takes a team to win a race. And Greg Ives made the call. Well, it's most likely was jacking up air pressures. I didn't ever hear him if he said anything, but it had to be air pressures. Just jack those up. And if he didn't, Alex, you got to get the lead here in the first few laps. Otherwise, you are not going to get the lead. When you get the lead, retain it. It was a short enough run. It was a 12-lap run, I think. But yeah, I think Richmond's one of those tracks. The higher downforce the higher horsepower has helped it. But I think it's one of those tracks that's a really good example of we need to get these cars off the ground. Because I think if you get them off the ground, get air underneath the car, that will help the racing product. For whatever reason, Richmond is just struggling right now. It's one of those really weird tracks that it's a short track, but for some reason it likes to act like a speedway a little bit. And
it should just be at night.
Well, the night racing really hasn't been any better. You get cooler temperatures, more grip. Cars. The objective was to have it hotter, so it'd be slicker. But I don't think it was a very hot day in Richmond that day. It was overcast even. So, they're not winning right now when it comes to Cup Series and weather conditions, because the Truck Series was sunny for the most part all race long. But yeah, from what I gathered, it was one of those races. You're going to get those. Look, we've had a really good run. This is race 9 of the year. We are officially 1/4 of the way through the NASCAR Cup season. I think we've had 7 races that were pretty good. 6, 7 races that are pretty good, and you kind of had 2 that were like, kind of feeling. I don't think we've had a dud. We haven't had. My goodness, it's been a while since we've had a dud race. We haven't had a Texas race in a while. Level of dudness, so that's good. I think we're heading in the right direction. We just need to continue to try to, we're not going to influence NASCAR, but we need the people who are there to influence them. Like, look, here's the things we need to change on next year's car, because it's going to be hard to change things for Richmond in the fall. They're not going to throw rule changes out there, especially with it being a playoff race. But for next year, okay, here's the things we can work on. Again, Rob, it's been a while since we've mentioned it on this podcast, but we've mentioned it a lot. Track-specific packages, for these cars. That's what we need, to go back to. Okay, we need to quit blanket covering, like including Indianapolis, the oval, and with Kansas. Okay, Kansas and Indianapolis are 2 different beasts. Okay, Indianapolis needs to be with Pocono. Kansas needs to be with Charlotte and Texas and Las Vegas. Richmond, while it's a short track, it's not going to be like Martinsville or Bristol. If it's comparative out there right now, really is only Memphis. Okay, and we don't go to Memphis, sadly. Iowa, it's its own beast. It's 7/8 of a track. So I'm just rambling at this point. But congratulations to Alex Bowman, all right, for winning this race. If you went to the Las Vegas, I don't know what the odds were. I haven't seen the odds. I haven't seen anyone tweet about it. And I don't think anyone would answer me if I tweeted them. But if someone would have gone to Vegas, let's say in January, and placed a $5 bet on what's it called? There's a prop bet that Chase Elliott would be the 4th and final Hendrick Motorsports driver to go to victory lane in 2020, you probably would have won a crap ton of money, because while he could have won a couple races earlier this year, he didn't. It was William Byron, Kyle Larson, and Alex Bowman who went to victory lane. So congratulations to them. Congratulations, Bowman. First time the 48's been to victory lane, obviously, since Jimmy Johnson won his last race. I wrote it down here. June 4th, 2017 at Dover. So it's been a while since the 48's been in victory lane. You know what I want?
We were still in college.
I know, man. I was still in college. My gosh, we are old. When was who was the first driver to win in the 43 after Richard Petty retired? Was that Bobby Hamilton?
If Hamilton won, then yes. If not, it would have been John Andretti, I think.
I'm looking this up because this is what this is. This is kind of what this is, and it's kind of like what Austin Dillon did in the 3.
And Joey Logano in the 20 too.
Yeah, but I'm talking.
Remember that race?
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. I'm looking this up here, folks.
I like those that commercial when Tony was leaving the team in the Home Depot, did commercials to pass the torch from Tony to Logano, and it was Tony doing home improvement stuff, and Joey kept screwing it up. I remember one, they were painting the house, and Joey he stepped back, got his whole foot stuck in the paint bucket or something.
Yeah. So without going into too much research here, Bobby Hamilton did win in the 43 at Phoenix in 1996. I'm pretty sure
so it was Bobby Hamilton.
Yeah, so it was the first driver to win post Richard Petty, Austin Dillon. Longer gap for the three there, obviously, but him winning at Charlotte
in the Cup Series, at least
in the Cup Series, correct? In the Cup Series. So this is kind of one of those moments. The 7-time champion numbers there. It's kind of one of those moments. So congratulations, Alex Bowman, again. Congratulations to him. Let's move on to IndyCar.
Yeah, that's a great way to segue here into IndyCar because Jimmie Johnson, man. He's got a very, very big hill to climb this year. He's got a very big hill to climb. I think he can do it, but he's that first race, and I didn't expect to be top of the time charts. I expected it. I didn't really expect. I don't know how to say this. I expected more out of Grosjean than I did out of Johnson and McLaughlin. I really felt like people are overestimating Johnson and McLaughlin because both of them. It's got to be over 10 years since McLaughlin last ran an open wheel car before St. Pete last year. I'm pretty sure if he ever ran one prior to that. Mm-hmm. Johnson, it's been even longer, if at all.
Yeah, these
two guys are going to have the largest learning curve and the steepest learning curves. Doesn't matter the fact that they're both with the two best teams right now. The fact of the matter is, Palou and Power were pretty much the two dominating forces of this whole race, and they're teammates to McLaughlin and Johnson. But that's the thing. Like, I think while it's great that we have these talents in IndyCar, let's not go so hard. Like, I felt like NBC and a lot of fans and even some other media were like really putting all their chips into like this high expectations for McLaughlin and Johnson. I'm like, guys, that's not fair. If you want to put all your chips on somebody to give high expectations to, give it to Grosjean. Because Grosjean's the one guy you're overlooking here.
Yeah, I think so. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I mean, I think the spin, he went a lap down.
I wasn't talking about the race either. I mean, the race went about as predictably as I expected for Jimmie Johnson.
Oh yeah, I thought maybe if he doesn't go a lap down so soon, I think he was probably going to go a lap down eventually. He just wasn't going to have quite the pace, but maybe if a couple cautions, he can stay on the lead lap. Maybe he gets lucky with a couple overtakes. But I thought myself, okay, 24 cars on the field. There's probably going to be a wreck. There's probably going to be a couple mechanical failures. He's going to finish 16th through 20th. I really thought that. I would think maybe by the time we get to Laguna Seca, or Long Beach, I should say, because Long Beach is the season finale, he might be competing for top 10s. I would look for Jimmie Johnson to be competing for much better finishes next year. It's
all about seat time. It's all about seat time. And that's what Jimmie said himself. Jimmie said basically, the goal is to finish the race. He doesn't care where he finishes. He doesn't care how many laps down he finishes. He's just got to log laps and finish the race. And they talked about it in his spin, too. It's all about learning stuff because, that was his first IndyCar race under actual race conditions. Right. Prior to that, you could do as many of those things as you want in practice. Well, people will be nice to you in practice because it's practice. In the race, they're not going to be so nice to you. They're going to close the door. They're going to defend. And I think Jimmie Johnson he got in a situation there where he was racing someone who was defending a little harder. He didn't know how the air was going to go over the car, and he just misjudged that. And the car went around on him, and that's a learning thing. He learned. I mean, if Johnson doesn't spin, he doesn't learn. And I know it's one thing because I rag on Nikita Mazepin all the time because he spins all the time. Well, Mazepin is in Formula One, and he has plenty of open wheel experience. He's expected to probably not spin as often as he does, which, by the way, didmazepinspin.com is updated now to include the fact that he has now spun in almost every session he's been in Formula One. Spun twice in practice, and now has spun in the race as well. But Johnson, let's be honest, but with Johnson is a 7-time NASCAR champion, yes, but he has never been in an open wheeled car until essentially this past year.
Yeah.
So it's an apples and oranges difference, but Johnson in this case is expected to spin. I expected him to spin because he needs to learn that. He needs to spin. He needs to see how the aero is going to affect. It's not like NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR are very aero dependent. IndyCar is very aero dependent, but the way that air goes over that car is a lot different because the cars are different. And Johnson has to learn that. And throughout time, Jimmy will learn that because he's a smart guy. He's a 7-time champion. He's smart. He knows how to adapt. He could do it. I mean, this is somebody who came from driving off-road cars to driving motorbikes to off-road cars to pavement cars and now to open-wheel cars. I mean, he can learn. I'm not denying that he can learn, but it's going to take him a while. McLaughlin is the same way. I mean, supercars is a lot different than NASCAR. And I'll talk about supercars in a little bit, but supercars is a lot different than NASCAR. Supercars is a lot different than IndyCar. So the McLaughlin probably going to NASCAR would probably be better. You would have probably more of a Marcus Ambrose type run, depending on what team he was with. Ambrose wasn't necessarily with the best team at the time. No, he ended up much later being with a midfield Penske team, which was still pretty good, but he was never at the level that would be comparable to McLaughlin going straight into Penske. So even with that, And also, Marcus is going from a similar racing car to a similar racing car. Now, supercars and NASCAR, yes, there's differences. There's a lot of very blatant differences, but they're both stock cars. They're both, cars. They're not open-wheeled cars. Yeah. They both have the same kind of properties. You kind of drive them the same. Whereas in IndyCar, it's a totally different driving experience. You go from, you can brake later, but you have to find the edge of just how late can you brake. Right. You know the edge when you're behind the wheel of your supercar or your cup car, but when you're behind of an Indy car, you don't know that limit yet. And once those guys learn the limit, then they're going to start being good. But people were really, really rushing them. Like NBC would not stop talking about Jimmy Johnson, even though he's running 21st 2 laps down. They would not stop talking about him. I'm like, guys.
Hey, at least they're talking about guys in the back of the pack.
Right, give them that, but it's not like they're giving Max Chilton any airtime, right?
Max love, no.
So, of course, I'm the only person probably watching for Max Chilton airtime, right? Let's be honest with that one.
We should all be watching for everyone to get airtime. Everyone should have a fair shake at airtime. I say that. That would be if I was somehow appointed Motorsports showrunner of whatever racing series, all right, everyone's going to get their, a fair equal share because all these teams put the same amount of effort and some of the back markers put even more effort in and everyone's sponsorship deserves airtime. Plain and simple as that. Make it work, Rob, let's talk about one point here. Obviously, Alex Palou won the race. Congratulations.
Yeah, Alex Palou win the race. I feel like you just glanced over that.
Yeah.
Who had this?
I didn't have this early anyways.
This is on Ganassi debut. He wins. Holy cow! I did not expect. I mean, he looked good last year. I won't deny, but he didn't strike me as an immediate race winner last year. You know what I mean? This year he comes right out of the gate, and it's like, oh God, we have to compete with him now. This literally is anybody's championship.
It's going to be fun to watch him because it's going to be. My initial thought was, well, he did something that Felix Rosenqvist couldn't do. And that was win in the Chip Ganassi car.
And Rosenqvist didn't even finish.
No, that was a scary wreck. Let's put it that way. Obviously, talk about air. Even veterans make mistakes. All right. Now, you talk about it. Joseph Newgarden lost the air, got loose off first lap there, spins, first collects Herta, and then he spins back around. And Ryan Hunter-Reay runs into him. And as you watch the slow replay images shared by Ryan Hunter-Reay on his socials, we got another win for Aeroscreen. It likely, and I would even go and say definitely saved Ryan Hunter-Reay's life. And much like to compare to what we saw last November in Bahrain, the Halo did its job, held up under pressure in high force contact, saved Romain Grosjean's life. The Halo held up, looked to be intact, even though it took the full brunt of Joseph Newgarden's right front suspension and tire. So, yeah.
I would say right now, if I were a race car driver, I would feel a heck of a lot safer with an Aeroscreen than just a halo. I would feel safe with a halo, but I would feel even safer with the Aeroscreen.
Oh yes, for sure, absolutely. I kind of wondered myself after I saw that, like, how much longer until Formula One we start hearing little blips of, okay, we need an Aeroscreen ourselves. We don't just need the halo. The halo has saved a number of lives. Saved Bottas's life this weekend, most likely. I
forgot about that. Yeah, that's true.
The way George Russell's car in front hit there. But I think they're going to have to start considering, okay, IndyCar's got something here. Not only, because it's not just tires and big pieces, it's the little debris. Because I kind of wondered who was the first car driving through the debris field in Imola this weekend when Bottas and them crashed. Anyways, I know one of them was Schumacher. I think one of them was Schumacher, but I think he was a second car. But you had all this debris flying. I think they're going to have to seriously consider the Aeroscreen in Formula One, because IndyCar, they have countless incidents in in less than a year, because the IndyCar season last year started in June. So in 10 months, they have countless incidents where the Aeroscreen has saved lives, if not prevented serious injury.
I agree with that 100%. So I'm going to wrap that up because we're running real late on to get to a lot of stuff here. So I'm going to talk about some of the other weekend wrap-ups here. Talk about some of the supercar races here real quick. The Supercars was in Simmons Plains. Shane Van Gisbergen was finally dethroned as the only winner in Supercars this year. He did, however, win race 1. For race 2, he was finally bested by his teammate, Jamie Whincup. Now, I had called for Cam Waters to probably beat him. Cam didn't win that. Man, it is so disappointing. I don't know what to say about Cam Waters, man. He does so well. He qualifies so well. But then it seems like he just can't put together the long race. It's like he can't defend. He just can't defend against those Red Bull cars. Whincup and SPG, every single time they get close to him, and he just either doesn't have the speed, doesn't have the pace, or whatever. He can't keep them behind him, and then he can't have a good enough pit stop where he can undercut him. It's just like, I'm really waiting for Cam Waters to break out and get that win, but right now he's just so unlucky. Tickford just needs to get their head in the game, man. Because guys like Heimgartner, man, they're not even anywhere near existence. But then you have Waters consistently starting on the pole and running up front, but he just can't put anything together. It is Heimgartner that's his teammate, I think, right? I'm not sure. I'll have to look on that. But anyway, so yeah, Jamie Whincup was the actual person who bested Shane Van Gisbergen over this weekend. And then race 3 had a surprise winner as well. I didn't expect this, but Chaz Mostert won for Andretti Wilkinshaw United. That was pretty cool. Got a little local connection there. Overall, I love Supercars weekend. Was great, as it normally is. Has some really good races, good pit strategy. Interesting to see, like, guys taking just one singular tire. That's a very interesting thing to.
Cool.
See it Supercars, but overall, I love Simmons Plains. If you've ever seen, like, I hope sometimes, Josh, someday, if you ever branch out and talk about like international racetracks on your featured racetrack or something, I'd love for you to talk about Simmons Plains sometime, because that is just such an interesting track. It's like it's a fast, short. I don't know how to describe it. It's like it's a road course, but it's fast enough to probably be a speedway, but it's also really short. You have like consistent sub 1 minute laps, so it's like a short track. It's this really weird, cool thing that has a lot of fast sections and one really, really tight passing zone where a lot of action can happen. It's one of the best racetracks. I saw earlier the S5000 series race open wheel cars on there. Yeah, fantastic race as well. SVG actually, I think, ended up winning one of those races. But yeah, just overall, just a great circuit that I love talking about. Did you want to add something before I get into Indy Lights and USF 2000?
I was just going to say maybe we need to do a Rob's featured racetrack.
Well, no, I don't know much about Simmons Plains. I just like the way the racetrack is designed, and I've liked every race I've ever watched there. So, that's why I just suggest I think more people should be aware that this beautiful track down in Tasmania, Australia exists, and it's this really cool anomaly of just it's got a hairpin turn, probably shorter. It's oh my god, that hairpin is tighter than a Martinsville turn. It is so tight, and it is just, but it has 2 long straights at the end of it, so you literally have a whole straight to get a pass on some guy, then make a turn, and then you have a whole straight to try and keep them at bay so that they don't get a draft off you and get you into the next passing zone. It's just,
I'm looking at it right now. That is a pretty tight corner. I mean, that is half Martinsville at least. Dang.
It is lovely. Indy Lights was back. By the way, hey, did you watch it on Peacock, Josh?
No, I was busy, unfortunately.
Well, I think you can watch it on a replay on Peacock. So I did that. That's how I did it. I watched the replay. Really good production value of an Indy Lights race. Kevin Lee and Charlie Kimball on the call. Really good production value. Linus Lundqvist won race 1. David Malukas won race 2 of the Indy Lights race. Keep in mind, this is the first Indy Lights race since 2019.
Yep.
So big deals there. Indy Pro 2000 had their season start as well. First race was run by Braden Eves. The second race was run by Hunter McElroy. Moving on now to the outstanding performance. Josh, go ahead and try and get this through quickly so we can have more time for the upshift and downshift. Who's your outstanding performance?
I'm going to give mine to Matt Benedetto and Wood Brothers. I think they're finally getting things together. There's a number of people I could have given it to this week, and you picked one that was certainly one of them. It's certainly very deserving. But I gave mine to Matt Benedetto after much debate. I know I remember when I sent to you, I said a game time decision, LOL, because I couldn't decide. I really couldn't decide. So yeah, Matt Benedetto, 9th place finish, first top 10 for them. They've been consistently getting better, as I mentioned last week. In the previous 4 races compared to the first 4 races of the year, and he ran in the top 10 all day long. And that's important. This isn't something he just fell into where he raced his way up from 17th to 9th in that final restart, and he outperformed 2 of the 3 Penske regulars. Important note there. It's, again, as I mentioned in the season preview, I think, or maybe it was after the Daytona race. It's not too late for plans to change for Mr. Austin Cindric in Team Penske and Wood Brothers. It's not too late. Just saying.
That'd be nice. But I'm giving mine to Roman Grosjean, and the reason why I'm doing that, like you said, Josh, you said this, not me. I don't know why I said like I said, but like you said, there was a number of drivers that we could have given this to. I mean, there was so many deserving drivers. I thought about Hamilton at one point. But then I was like, no, Hamilton wasn't Hamilton perfect, so I'm not going to give it to him just yet. I thought about Lando Norris. I thought about Alex Bowman. I thought about Alex Palou. I thought about, there was a lot of drivers that I felt that were very worthy, but there was one driver that I felt like, and I'm not saying this is accurate because he didn't really fall under the radar. He was interviewed, he was taken seriously, he got airtime, but compared to Johnson and McLaughlin, it seemed like this guy was kind of an also-ran, despite the fact that he performed much better. Mm-hmm. Roman Grosjean. So keep in mind, the reason why I'm giving this to him is this is his first time in an IndyCar, basically. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have nearly as much testing in an IndyCar as Jimmy Johnson or Scott McLaughlin, which is understandable. Grosjean's been in an open-wheel car for the last 15 years, and they have not. So you probably don't need as much testing. But the fact of the matter was it was a Dale Coyne, Rick Ware car, which basically, if you think about that, Dale Coyne, Rick Ware, 2 of probably the most infamous team owners when it comes to hiring bad drivers and fielding bad cars, right? No, Grosjean goes out there basically almost makes the Fast Six. Like it's only a tenth or maybe less than a tenth off of the Fast Six.
And then he was top 5 for a lot of the race too.
And so he was just out there running so well, and he still got burns on his hands, guys. Let's not forget this guy still has burns on his hands from the accident at Bahrain. So I really, given all of those factors, I didn't expect Grosjean to be up to speed as quickly as he was. I expected him to be up to speed. I expected him to be fast. Mm-hmm. But I did not expect him to be as fast as he was. Like, Fast Six fast. You know what I mean?
agree.
Like, I expected him to qualify in the top 10, but I didn't see him, like, qualifying top 5, which was an actual legitimate possibility for about, say, give or take 10 or 20 seconds during qualifying. So, I was just impressed with him overall, and that's why I've got to give it to him. So moving on now here, let's go into the upshift and downshift. We're going to have our favorite segment of the show. Upshift, you agree. Downshift, you disagree. Remember, play along at home. Use the hashtag RobinRoller anytime. Of course, if you're listening to this car, wait until you get home. But stay fired up about it. Stay fired up about it. We want you to stay fired up about it. But don't tweet and drive. We don't want you to do that. So just arrive safely and then be as mad as you want about our opinions. First question here. Track limits in Formula One must be addressed and have a clear black and white set of rules going forward. Do you upshift and downshift? Josh, I'd normally take this over to you, but my answer is so clean and cut to the point that I agree 110% that this is an actual thing, so I'm going to upshift, and I don't feel like I need to explain anymore. I think past examples speak for themselves.
I upshift as well. I think there are plenty of examples this weekend that demonstrate we need to have clear and well-known rules, and it doesn't matter what your last name is. Doesn't matter if you're Hamilton or Mazepin. You are going to get the same treatment from the race director that if I do this, I think it needs to be three-strike rule personally. Okay, you get 1. Okay, there you go. 2. All right, next time.
That's what they gave to Tsunoda, though. They gave him 3 strikes, and then it was a 5-second time penalty.
There was photographic evidence that Hamilton did the same thing that Norris did in qualifying, and he didn't get penalized.
Oh yeah, okay. We're talking about qualifying and stuff. Yeah, like I get it. Yeah, absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what session of the weekend it is. Practice is one thing. But qualifying and race particularly. Okay, you get 3 strikes. And you're getting nailed. The 4th strike, you're getting nailed. 5th strike, you're getting nailed. I don't care. You're 50 seconds addition to your time. I don't care. Because you made 10 mistakes. Or you technically made 12 mistakes. You had 2 chances. It needs to be clear, cut, and dry. I am tired. I'm sick and tired of track limits dictating what happens in these races and qualifying.
Next question here. Benjamin Flowers, a professor of Ohio State University's Knowlton School of Agriculture. And yes, I did not say the Ohio State University because I just feel...
Architecture.
Architecture? Why did I say agriculture?
I don't know, dude.
I'm so sorry, guys. I am somewhere else today.
Want to re-rack that?
Yeah, all right, let's go. Benjamin Flowers, a professor of Ohio State University's Knowlton School of Architecture, says the idea for building a roof over Bristol Motor Speedway is feasible, and he estimates it would cost about $80 million. And do you upshift or downshift the idea that should be explored by Speedway Motorsports?
Well, I upshift that they should explore it. They have a lot of irons in the fire right now, as the next question I think will also allude, to this. You have the Nashville Fairgrounds deal. You potentially have North Wilkesboro. I mean, again, I'm saying that very loosely. Potentially North Wilkesboro. And the next question will also be part of that as well. But this is something, they should explore, because I think it would be very neat to have Bristol Motor Speedway as the season finale for NASCAR. But the problem is November in Eastern Tennessee is kind of unpredictable. It's most likely going to be very cold, and you have a chance for snow. You can't have that on a race weekend and a championship weekend, but a roof allows you to do that, and it also opens up the opportunity for Bristol to be used for other indoor activities during the winter. So you opens up the door for more business potential for Bristol Motor Speedway and Speedway Motorsports. I think they should at least explore it, look at it, and if it's not one too many irons in the fire, go for it.
I'm going to upshift it, but I'm with the assumption that it would be a retractable roof, because I would not like to see it be a permanently enclosed
that's a good
venue.
Point.
I would like to see Bristol I would like for them to, at the very least, if it's a nice day, if it's warm outside, they should be able to open the roof and give the fans good feeling. But at the same time, if it's rainy, in order to make sure that the race happens, go ahead and close the roof and don't worry about any rain. You know what I mean? And that would be great.
implied that. My bad. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but I kind of was implying that, but I didn't say I was implying it. So yeah, I agree.
Well, I haven't heard any specific rumblings of whether or not it's going to be a permanent roof or a retractable roof. I haven't heard any of that, so I don't know what it is going to be. So I'm just
down to cost.
Right, it'll come down to cost. So, if they're going to make this investment, they have to make it worthwhile by making it a retractable roof, because you can't have this thing and then kind of take away the atmosphere of racing that people really like. And you have to absolutely make sure that it's ventilated properly, because if you're going to enclose all those people into a giant stadium, you have to make sure it's ventilated. Because I've been to a number of indoor races, and man, let me tell you something. CO2 poisoning sucks. It's not something you want to get. So it has to be ventilated.
I think that would go without saying that Speedway Motorsports isn't going to enclose this thing like an NBA arena or a typical NFL retractable roof stadium. I think
right. I'm just saying, and I'm saying you're right that they wouldn't do that without it. But who knows? Anything can happen. Again, if it comes down to cost and cost-cutting maneuvers are taken, don't, my whole thing about this is, if you're going to go through with this roof, don't cut any corners, don't cut any costs, just go all out and let it pay for itself down the long run. You know what I mean? If that's the route they're going to go.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Next question. With the United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas up in questions, Speedway Motorsports will end up the primary promoter of COTA in the near future. Do you upshift or downshift this, Josh?
Again, a lot of irons in the fire. It just depends on how successful I think that these next couple years are. With NASCAR there. What is the future? Does F1 re-sign COTA? But I could certainly see them doing this, like being what they're doing with COTA, being renting the track, except, hey, we'll take over the promotions deal. So it's more like, they're wanting to do with Nashville Fairgrounds. Hey, we'll run the track for you. We'll put on all the events and all that stuff. I can see this happening if they are committed to COTA for the long term. So I upshift.
Yeah, this is an interesting thing. Personally, the fact of the matter is, I don't really care what happens to it. Especially if Formula One leaves. If Formula One leaves at that point, it's probably just going to be down to NASCAR and IndyCar paying the bills for that. So they might as well. I'm not saying IndyCar. Who knows if IndyCar will even go back? They're not going back this year. I don't know if they'll go back again. But at this point, it'll probably just be NASCAR. And if that's the case, then if that's the case, and you go ahead and they go ahead and decide, okay, well, we're gonna just run NASCAR here, and we're gonna call it NASCAR's premier road course or whatever, which is an insult to Sonoma and Watkins Glen. But I'm not thinking before I'm talking. I have an idea in my head, and then I'm just shooting. But yeah, that's just kind of how I feel about it. I'm kind of just neutral. I'm gonna shift it into neutral because it's not something that I'm dwelling on all that much. You know what I mean?
And I think it's also not to stay on the point, but I think it's also that the facility. The reason I said promoter in the question is because I think the facility would cost a lot for them just to outright buy. So becoming the primary promoter makes a lot more sense. And I would love to see, if that's were to happen, or even if it doesn't happen, I would love to see IndyCar come back. I'd love to see IMSA come back. Because the track, again, like you said, a sense of nationalism, but I think it's a great track. I've never seen a bad race at COTA. I've just seen some good races, but I've never seen a downright bad race there.
Hell, Supercars put on some of the best racing I've ever seen at COTA.
Exactly. I would love to see them just get all these different forms of racing like a number of other tracks in this country get. But,
yeah, that was the big appeal for COTA for the longest time, was that it was quite literally attracting so much international racing. If you lived in Austin, there was a time where you were the luckiest race fan on the face of the planet. There was not a race that you could not go and see. There was not a racing series that you missed. MotoGP was right there. WEC was right there. You wanted some Formula One, you got your Formula One. You want supercars? Yeah, we'll give you a supercars. Why the heck not? and then you go up the road, you go to Texas Motor Speedway, you get NASCAR, you get IndyCar. Like, literally, if you're a Texan at this time, you are the luckiest motorsports fan, period.
Especially
I would love to see all that come back. Well, yeah, I mean, I would love to see that kind of idea come back to COTA.
Yeah.
Final question here, and this is probably going to take up a lot of time, at least for Josh. I'm going to get through it quickly because I have made my feelings very clear, and I know what they are, and I have decided on how I feel. So this next question here is: NASCAR has not approved Jennifer Jo Cobb to run in her Cup Series debut for Rick Ware Racing. Do you upshift or downshift NASCAR's decision? Now, we obviously left this out of Rob's Racing Report because we wanted to save it for this time. Also because it was kind of late breaking. It broke right before we were supposed to go on podcast. So my personal opinion is I don't understand where NASCAR's coming from here. Jen Jo has raced plenty of super speedway races before. She's ran plenty of NASCAR Xfinity races, plenty of truck races at Talladega before. It's not like she's in the way. You have a lot of other drivers out there that are going to be racing this weekend at Talladega that will be in the way regardless. Quinn Half is not going to stay with the pack, guys. He's not going to stay with the pack. I'm sorry. And that's, I hate to say that. Probably whoever's in the 52 Rick Ware car is probably not going to stay with the pack. I'm sorry. Let's just be straight and blunt here. Those guys are not going to stay with the pack any better than Jen Jo would. The fact of the matter is, those guys will probably not get out of the way when the pack comes up on them. Jen Jo probably will be smart because she is a smart driver. She knows what she's doing. Just because she doesn't run up front every week doesn't mean she's a bad driver. There's a lot of drivers that scrape and crawl their way at the back of the field that at the very least could be courteous drivers. There's a lot of drivers out there in NASCAR right now that aren't that way, but Jen Jo is not one of them. She's someone who is a very courteous driver. So it really bothers me that NASCAR has just looked at her and said, no, you're not approved to run your Cup debut for, the reasons Bob Pocker stated, which you can read on Twitter on your own, or Josh can read them, I don't care, but they said quality. The biggest one that bothered me was the quality that they said. And I say, to that, Jen Jo has been around for a lot longer in NASCAR than, again, a lot of the drivers that are at the back of the field in the Cup Series have been. And it really bothers me that you're essentially treating a NASCAR veteran like someone who shouldn't be out on a short track. And I don't understand. I really don't see how Jen Jo would be any of more of a risk out there than like Quinn Half is. I'm sorry. That's my opinion on that. I downshifted wholeheartedly, and I'm going to turn it over to Josh.
Well, I downshift her not being approved. However, I upshift, and she's just the unlucky one to get the crack. I upshift NASCAR seemingly starting to take a stance on driver qualifications because she is more qualified to be out there than Quinn Half. All right, that's plain and simple. Okay,
you see what Quinn Half did? He almost ran into the leaders in Richmond. I said that like right before Bowman's about to take the checkered flag. People are like, "Oh crap, Quinn Half, what's he doing? He's in the middle of the racing line when he's like 15 miles an hour slower than everybody else." Yeah. Guy has no sense of awareness out there. He almost takes out the leader on the last freaking lap. It's ridiculous. And you're going to sit here and tell me that Jen Jo, someone out there who would actually get out of the way if she was in that same position, can't be out. I'm sorry. Continue, Josh. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just really bothered me because I remember what Quinn Half did towards the end of that race on Richmond.
Yeah, so, I mean, if they can't... I mean, here's Bob Pocker's tweet. He said, Jennifer Jo Cobb not approved to run Cup at Dega. NASCAR decision based on performance quality. NASCAR has been more stringent with recent Cup approvals. She was years ago okay for Cup, but if don't run in series for a year must be reapproved. Not NOT, all capitalized, not a result of Richmond wreck with Norm Benning.
I don't think I thought it was. I don't think I understand some people might have thought that it was, but I don't think that would have played into
I don't think that would have played into but yeah, I don't think that played into the decision at all. I think it's just him clarifying, like, I'm sure I'm not going to go through all his comments and look at it, but I'm sure he got lit up with that. But My thing is, I think she's qualified to be out there. I think I feel like they're just looking at the results, like the end result. Okay, she finished here. She hasn't performed well. Okay, well, she's
in her own underfunded truck. What do you expect?
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. She's in a truck that 5-6 years ago was comparatively better funded to the top running trucks, but that the gap has grown where now her truck, even I worry, I'm like, you got to park this truck on lap 5 because it's just not fast enough. She's got the talent, she's got the experience in not great equipment, but solid equipment that's not going to be in the way, and she's got enough starts. She's got enough starts that she should be approved. I think she's just she's like Josh Williams a week ago at Martinsville. He's the unlucky one who finally got penalized by NASCAR in a race for spinning intentionally. Jennifer Jo Cobb is now the unlucky person who NASCAR finally said, all right, we're gonna say no to this. Where, again, even as it stands now, where Quinn Half is now in his second year with Starcom, to me, is still just not qualified enough to have that ride. And Jennifer Jo Cobb, if you put her in that 00 car, is going to do better. She's going to do better at this point in time.
I would argue that her and a Rick Ware car should still be faster than she is in her own truck right now.
Oh, I agree, 100%. 100%. Like, look, the reality is, if they lose, they're going to be in their own draft pack by themselves. So, and she's going to be one that I feel like, depending upon who the other drivers are, I haven't looked at the entry list, but if you were to put those 4 Rick Ware cars out there, I put her in front and say, okay, you're going to lead us through. They're going to follow you. If when your spotter says, hey, leader's coming up, go high, go low. All right, she's going to go low, and she's going to lead that pack through wherever they go. That's who I would have as the point person on this. So I downshift her being not okay to race because I just don't think they're looking at the right numbers here. All right, they're not looking at the whole picture. I feel like they're zoning in on one little thing, and that's the overall. She finished 30th, 15 laps down. Okay, yeah, but her truck. Okay, her truck is not good. Was she in the way? Did she race like BJ McLeod, or did she race like Quinn Half? Okay, and again,
that is a very good point.
Yeah, okay,
especially when you're comparing back markers. That is a great point, because BJ McLeod has always been like the gold standard of how you race as a back marker. You race your own race, you do as well as you can, but you get out of the way and you race everybody with respect. That you're not racing, for position or for points or whatever. BJ knows what he's doing out there. He knows, that he's not going to win the race. He knows but he's trying to get the best finish he can. So he's not going to interfere with the race. Quinn Half is going out there behind BJ McLeod usually, and just whatever, I'll run in the middle of the racing line. It doesn't matter, the cars are coming up way faster than me, and I'm affecting the outcome of the race most of the time. Who cares? I get to race in NASCAR.
Yeah, so I would say this is the wrong decision, but I like that they're finally taking a stance. Hopefully it remains. Hopefully that the next guy who comes up, who only has one Xfinity start, one truck start, does not get approved for Cup racing. You got to have. Hold on. I'm going to pull this up real quick. I just want to share this really quick, just to show everyone, in case you forgot, in case you don't believe us. Racing Reference. I trust it very much.
I never not trusted Racing Reference. I don't know if you can even do that.
Yeah. She has 31 Xfinity Series starts across 15 years. All right. And in the Truck Series, she has 217. To me, right there,
that's still more than Quinn Half had before his first Cup start.
We've gone over this before, where we went over like how we think a requirement driver point system to elevate your way up through Cup. To me, right there, she has. If she would never have made an Xfinity Series start, she has enough starts in the Truck Series, running full time, even or attempting to run full time. Cup Series eligible, right there. She's Cup Series eligible, and I know she's got enough starts in other lower divisions that aren't on Racing Reference to again be eligible for it. So, yeah, downshift her being, again, I've said this like 10 times, but I downshift her not being approved. I upshift NASCAR seemingly taking a stance on drivers who aren't qualified. All right.
And that's a fair way to go about it. So let's move on here, Josh. You're talking a lot. Let's go ahead and just keep talking. Let's get into your rollers featured racetrack, and let's give the good listeners here something good to go out on before they get tired of us talking.
All right. Well, today's featured racetrack's history begins with a Philadelphia man named Joe Ryan, who traveled to the Laurentian Mountains in Quebec back in 1938. He went there to find gold, but instead found the area covered in white, i.e. snow. On top of a mountain, he told two of his friends that he would vow to make the area an alpine village. The mountain they stood on was Mont-Tremblant. So if you haven't figured it out in the last few seconds, today's rollers featured racetrack is Le Circuit Mont-Tremblant. Going back to Joe Ryan's dream, it became a reality within about a year. Which quickly became a popular place for winter sports enthusiasts, and today remains that way. However, during the summer months, as one could expect, it would be quite difficult to make a living for a winter sports resort without snow. Quite difficult. So a local hotel operator named Leo Sampson was also a racing enthusiast. He worked to raise funds over several years, and like Joe Ryan, turned his Mont-Tremblant dream into a reality, which was creating a racing circuit. In fact, the circuit, which officially opened in August 1964, was dedicated to the memory of Joe Ryan's son, Peter. Peter had a successful career in skiing, but it was cut short due to injury. He then turned his hand to auto racing. He was the first Canadian to participate in a Formula One Grand Prix, which was his only start, Watkins Glen 1961. He finished 9th. That wasn't in the points at the time. He also won the first ever Canadian Grand Prix in 1961 at Motorsports, which at the time was a non-championship event. Tragically, Peter lost his life in a crash at Reims on July 2nd, 1962, at the age of 22. So again, the circuit opened. It was dedicated in his memory, the connection there with the ski resort. When the course opened in 1964, it was only a mile and a half in length, but was still very challenging by many accounts. The following year, the full 2.65-mile course was finished. The new backstretch had a section known as the Hump, which had potential for cars to fly over the crest in a similar way that the Nürburgring did back in the day on the very treacherous course it was, which it was compared to, again, the whole course, not just that one part, but the whole course was compared to the Nürburgring. In 1966, the circuit was host to the inaugural Can-Am race, won by John Surtees and Imola. The event saw the Hump claim 2 cars beyond repair for the first time, which when they were launched to the air, but luckily the drivers did not sustain serious injuries. 2 IndyCar doubleheaders were contested at Mont-Tremblant in 1967 and 1968. All 4 races were won by Mario Andretti, and he led 136 of 148 total laps at the track between those 4 races, with Al Unser only leading the other 12. The circuit hosted the second and fourth Canadian Grand Prix, which were included on the official World Championship calendar in 1968 and 1970. Denny Hulme won the first race in 1968 with McLaren teammate and boss Bruce McLaren second. Pedro Rodriguez in a BRM finished third. In qualifying, Jackie Ickx crashed his Ferrari and broke his leg, ending any hopes of winning the 1968 title. But in 1970, he got a little bit of revenge by winning the race over Ferrari teammate Clay Regazzoni and then Chris Amon, who finished third. Formula One would not return. The circuit's remote nature, out kind of in the middle of nowhere type of deal, and its safety record was, in question even for the times. And then they went to Motorsport, as I covered last year, for a few years, and even then Motorsport safety standards weren't enough to keep Formula One there, and they eventually went to Montreal. Can-Am would continue for about another decade racing here, but eventually, again, the course was too dangerous for it, and it even though it had high praise from drivers enjoyed going there. It just was lacking in safety. And it was kind of in a time capsule of its own. Even by the 90s, it still felt like it was back in the 70s and maybe even early 80s there. And by the time 2000 rolled around, it was in desperate need of an upgrade. So enter Lawrence Stroll. Yes, that Lawrence Stroll, Lance Stroll's dad, the owner, primary owner of Aston Martin F1 team there. He purchased the facility and appointed Alan Wilson to redevelop the circuit to modern FIA standards, but to keep the course's character and, just the spirit of the track. Don't lose what we have here, but upgrade it. That kind of can be contradicting and tough to do, but I think we've seen it in a lot of modern facilities still. So runoff areas were extended, and the course was widened to about 11 meters, along with new crash barriers. The hump was heavily reduced for safety, with new chicanes for faster cars being added, and along the new auxiliary paddock being added on the circuit's south end, a lot smaller in case they just wanted to use the, I forget what the circuit now is, the shorter circuit's called there, but just the south part of the track. You had a paddock there, you don't have to drive all around. Very common in a lot of circuits to have that. Road Atlanta has one, and I know the Pittsburgh International Racing Complex or Race Complex has one too. Rob, I don't know if you ever heard about that track, but
I have, yeah.
Okay, good.
They race Formula Regional America Series.
Okay, well there you go. Awesome. I didn't know that. So this was obviously very extensive. The project that they were doing was taking a track that was decades behind the times to modern times, and the track was closed for 2 years to get all this done. He even had the buildings upgraded, but using their original design. Again, part of that spirit, part of keeping the history there. The control tower was even given an additional floor on top, but it's done so well, it's difficult to know without even looking at it like a photograph. Like, oh my gosh, that is there another floor on that on that tower there? So Stroll took care of the facility is kind of my point, and I think that's very cool. The Grand Am Series went to Mont-Tremblant from 2002 to 2005. In kart race there in its final season before the IndyCar unification. Of course, the final season was 2007. The unification came in 2008. There's no room for the track on the new calendar in the 2008 season, so it was dropped. So the circuit is predominantly...
Fun fact about that Champ Car race, and I apologize for interrupting you there, but there was a fun fact that Mont-Tremblant was actually a replacement because when they lost Montreal as a Champ Car race to the NASCAR. And so in order to get another race in Montreal, they went to Mont-Tremblant instead.
There you go. Thank you, Rob, for adding that. I appreciate that. So now the circuit, since, then it's just been local racing, really schools, local driving, not much is held there, internationally or nationally in a sense. It is home to the Jim Russell Racing School. Now, the reason I chose this track today is due to the fact it faces a new challenge. So a little over a year ago, a Canadian Supreme Court judge made a ruling that essentially means that any racing of any kind is breaking a noise ordinance. To make a long story short, the track is limited to 55 decibels with a 3 decibel tolerance. So to put that into perspective, that is equivalent to a normal conversation at home. I don't know of a car that is that quiet. All right. At least a non-electric car, that's that quiet. So that makes it very difficult. So the ruling obviously comes, residents were complaining. The kind of the story is that, hey, this track isn't, there isn't this much enthusiasm for this track as there once was. The city of Mont-Tremblant's a little more fashionable was one word I saw in an article used. So I'm like, okay. So Lawrence Stroll has put the track up for sale, and all bids were due on April 15th, so this past week. And the future is certainly uncertain, and Lawrence Stroll, he's got a lot of, I've used this term already in this podcast, but he's got a lot of irons in the fire, and this is one he's just not wanting to keep hot at the moment. So you gotta make business decisions, and they were able to run a race there last year towards the end of the season, and it just looks difficult for this track to continue on without some sort of other ruling, especially when you're limited to 55 decibels, 58 decibels, again, with the tolerance. So I kind of just want to make a quick note. It's the same story what I ranted about earlier with the Miami Grand Prix. It's the same story we've seen in Nashville. I think it's important that, if Stroll doesn't end up selling, or whoever the new operator is, work out a deal with the city that says, hey, we're not going to run racing here every day, all right? We're going to limit it to certain weekends of the year, and that's what we're going to do. That's how we're going to operate it now. It allows us to stay in business. It allows people to still come here and make money. I don't know how much money the city makes off of the tourism with the winter sports stuff. I can't tell you that. But there's someone down the way is making money of this track being in operation. Someone's getting a job. Someone, local restaurants making money off it. I could go on the list there. But I think it's important for us to save tracks, but it's also important for people to work together. And I think that's a lesson we can take in a lot of things in life. So I hope this track stays around. It's got a storied history, especially in its beginning, and it would be very, very saddening to see it go away. So Racing Reference, Racing Circuits, and The Drive assisted in today's Rollers featured racetrack. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so it's fun to start with this one.
Yeah, thanks for talking about that, Josh. It was obviously timely. When I saw that, I thought, oh man, I heard about that in the news. Isn't Mont-Tremblant getting sold? And as much as I hate to hear that, the future is uncertain for Mont-Tremblant, it has been a great racing circuit. Like I said, the Champ Car race there in 2007 was really, really interesting. I think who won that? Was it a Bobby D win or?
I think Dutch driver
Bobby D. Yep, it was Robert Doornbos. Robert Doornbos. Okay, so I was right. People call him Bobby D. Of course, now we know. He has since retiring from racing, we all know what Bobby D does now. Josh, you remember, right?
No.
No, he owns a successful sex toy company now.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how we wanted to end the series.
The podcast was that. Oh man,
didn't expect that. You guys didn't know that. You guys not know this is obvious. It's right there. It's anywhere on the internet.
Rob, I think you know a lot more, and think that there's a lot more common knowledge out there. You just know these things. I don't know where you learn them, but there you go. Dang. I'm just saying. Did not expect that to come out of your mouth. I did not expect that at all.
You did not once expect that. That's what Robert Doornbos does in his post-racing life.
Well, here we go. Recording on April 19th, April 20th, 2021. Rob mentioned adult toys on this podcast.
That is made by Robert Doornbos, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
What's in the windshield? We got some stuff to talk about up there that's not found at a Cirilla's. Formula One returns in 2 weeks at Portimao in Portugal for the Portuguese Grand Prix on May 2nd, followed by the Spanish Grand Prix at Catalonia on May 9th. Formula E races this upcoming weekend. Oh boy, we got the first Formula E race on a permanent circuit. I'm excited for this. At the circuit, Ricardo Tormo for the Valencia. Excuse me, I should probably not burp when I'm doing these promos. For the Valencia E-Prix on April 24th and 25th. The NTT IndyCar Series returns for more action this weekend for the annual Streets of St. Petersburg race on April 25th. That'll be on NBC. Formula E, we'll see if CBS Sports decides to broadcast it. As we all know what happened in Rome. We'll find out. I haven't checked the TV listings yet for this weekend, but I'll have to now.
And that's fluid, probably.
It is fluid. NASCAR has a triple header at Talladega Superspeedway this weekend. The ARCA Menard Series races first, and the NASCAR Xfinity Series will race after them on Saturday, April 24th. And then the Cup Series will race on April 25th. It's Talladega week, guys. Can you believe it? I can't believe it. I'm excited. Yeah. You're excited. We're all excited. It's St. Petersburg weekend. It's Formula E on a permanent circuit weekend. It's a big weekend, and I'm excited for what we have in store for us. There's probably other races that I'm forgetting of and that I'll talk about later, like supercars. I always leave supercars out of the what's in the windshield, but every time the next week I talk about it. So anyway, that is going to do it for us today on Rob and Roller Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you so much for hanging in there and listening to us on this nice long podcast. We really appreciate all of your support. So again, thank you to all of you for listening. And we will be back again next week with another edition of the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. I am at rpeters33. Josh is at roller_01. And our show is spelled just as it sounds, ROBANDROLLER. That's Rob and Roller. So that is going to do it for us. Have a great Talladega weekend, everybody. Enjoy the races. And we will see you next time. For Josh Roller, I'm Rob Peters, and this has been the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast.